Do you ever want to chuckle when someone says, family is everything? Or perhaps shed a tear? I'm not sure which one best suits me. I suppose I was born as a receipt, a living, breathing result of a one night encounter and a great deal of humiliation. If family is everything, after a wild night with a man she never spoke of again, my mother became pregnant with me. She was compelled to marry him by her old fashioned Bible on the nightstand, reputation over everything grandparents. I arrived after a shotgun wedding and a few uncomfortable months. Not as a miracle. Not as a, well, I guess we'll make it work. Just an error that was irreparable without causing a scandal. A baby blanket wrapped around a punishment. I was never treated as his child by my father. He used to moan, "There goes my youth," whenever I entered the room, as if I had personally snatched away the door to his ideal existence and chained him to a mortgage. In no overt manner was my mother cruel. She didn't scream or hit. However, she also never gave me a smile, never gave me a hug. She never claimed to love me. I was simply there. What else could she do but put up with some awkward presence? I had mastered the golden rule by the time I was 10. Don't cause trouble. Keep silent as you walk. Breathe more gently. Keep your head down. Go into corners and disappear. Perhaps if I kept quiet enough, people wouldn't be angry with me for being here. However, it was unsuccessful. It was never successful. As the unwelcome reminder of a life my father didn't desire, I was always a pain in his side. The specter of a decision my mother was unable to reverse. Then Ella arrived. The miracle child then appeared out of nowhere. She was fair-haired, chubby-cheeked, timing and dimples from birth. She was held by my parents as if they were being compensated. When she was born, my father wept not with regret, but with happiness. My mother grinned as if she had at last given the planet a cause to continue spinning. And me? At the age of 8, I was already receiving assistance. "Zoe, go get your sister's bottle." "Zoe, keep your voice down." "Ella's sleeping." "Zoe, why can't you be more like your sister?" Ella was dressed in new clothes. I received cartons of hand-me-downs that had a mothball and attic odor. Ella had sparkler candles and character-themed birthday cakes. I got a candle caught in a piece of bread one year. Really, no, bread. My mother once asked me, did I do something wrong? And she stared at me as if I were a question she didn't have time to answer. I remember this so well that it makes my stomach turn. She then sighed and remained silent. I got that. Nothing. When it came to me, silence was her favorite word. However, I adjusted. I became invisible. I reasoned that perhaps I wouldn't be as despised if I could fit in and get smaller. Perhaps my dad wouldn't give me that weary, resentful look, as if I had personally bought him a yacht. Perhaps my mother wouldn't sigh each time I spoke. This is a spoiler, it failed, but I persisted. I was given a mop at 8 and instructed to clean the house from now on. I began by wiping down the tables before moving on to the sweeping. I was cleaning toilets, doing laundry, and preparing dinner by 10 o'clock. Ella, however, had no idea how to even clean a plate. My mother referred to it as learning responsibility, but let's face it, I was a free maid. My own backpack was tearing open, so I once dared to request a new one. Mom gave me a look as if I had requested a necklace made of diamonds. "It still functions perfectly," she stated. Ella received a brand new pink one with glitter zippers and a unicorn charm a week later. However, it wasn't the material that caused pain. Her face was it. My mother's warm, proud, and human gaze on Ella. I could clean the entire house from top to bottom and not receive a thank you, but my father gave her a pat on the back for her outstanding marks. Nevertheless, cooking was the one activity that gave me a sense of myself. I made scrambled eggs by myself when I was 9 years old. Watching the yolk melt into the toast was nothing special. It seemed like magic at that moment, something I could make magical. I began observing my mother's cooking from a distance, learning her techniques, and trying things out late at night when no one was available to give me feedback. I could prepare a whole lunch by 12. The first time I made lasagna, I will always remember. Ella gasped after taking one bite. "Whoa! This is amazing!" I waited for something, for recognition. My mom grinned. At my dad. "Don't you think I improved it this time?" I said. She said. I felt like screaming. I succeeded, but I remained silent. since shadows are silent. Nevertheless, I had a dream. In my fantasy, I had my own kitchen. It was a real place with my name, menu, and food, not just a nook of a house where I prepared meals without gratitude. People came to this eatery out of love, not duty. They laughed when I ventured to say that aloud. A dining establishment? My father sneered. You now believe that you are Gordon Ramsay? Every day, restaurants go bankrupt, Mom added. Why not something grounded? An instructor. Secretary.accountant. With a sly smile, Ella, who is always willing to twist the knife, added, McDonald's is always hiring. I take it you already cook for free? My cheek bled from the force of my bite. However, I didn't answer. I was shocked to learn that my dad did wind up covering the cost of culinary school. Not out of generosity, though. This is all you're getting from me, he said exactly. After this, don't expect a cent. Everything passes to Ella, including the savings and the house. To be honest, I wasn't even offended. I'm just relieved. They had nothing to offer me. All I needed was a chance. It was culinary school. I felt like I existed for the first time. My history didn't matter to anyone there. Just myself, my food, and my knives. I worked as if it were my last day, since it did. However, dreams don't cover rent. I had to crawl back to my home, the last place I wanted to be, after graduating destitute and homeless. You're a chef now, Zoe, my mother chirped. So you can prepare meals for us each day, correct? Ella laughed. Yeah, at last helpful. I didn't respond. I just hung my culinary certificate on the aged and cracked wall of the room I'd never left by going upstairs. I clenched my fists under the blanket and stared at the ceiling that night. This is not the end, I silently promised myself. I'll leave this house one day, and I won't turn around this time. I assumed that things would change after I finished culinary school. I hoped that those who had previously regarded me like wallpaper would finally recognize me as a real person. However, I ought to have known better. It seemed as though nothing had happened when I returned to that house. Zoe, the kitchen floor's dirty again. You're a chef now, right? So make dinner. Don't forget to do the laundry after your shift. To them, I was merely their personal maid with a certificate on the wall, not a daughter with a desire, as every word they spoke supported it. Even though I was working long hours at a nearby restaurant, getting very little sleep, and barely making ends meet, I still arrived home to a fresh list of chores tacked to the refrigerator every night, resembling a cruel scavenger hunt. During all of this, what was Ella doing? Like the spoiled little heir she had always been, she slept in, painted her nails, and lived off of our parents. She was never a cook, never did any cleaning, never volunteered to assist. Nevertheless, my parents would go out of their way to help her. My dad then drove into the driveway one day, honking like a crazy person, and I will never forget this. As I wiped flour from my hands and went outside, I noticed a brand new, gleaming white automobile. He waved Ella over while dangling the keys. He smiled and said, My baby girl deserves the best. Half in my apron, I stood on the porch and gazed at the sunlight reflecting off the hood. When I was her age, I never even considered owning a car. I rode buses. With only one functional brake, I rode a bike on a rusty frame. And my dad once sneered at me when I mentioned saving money for a used car. With what sum of money? You're barely able to pay your rent. Take it seriously. It hurt more than I thought it would. What exactly was I paying in rent? Yes, the rent I was reportedly supposed to pay for sharing the same bedroom from my childhood, where the ceiling fan clicked like a metronome for madness, and the wallpaper was still peeling. Every time my mom noticed my pay stub protruding from my purse, she reminded me, You help with expenses. You live under this roof. It didn't matter if I was preparing 3 meals a day, cleaning the entire house, working 10 hours at restaurants, and giving away the majority of my earnings as if I were a squatter living in my own home. However, Christmas, yes, I did have hope. Hope is an oddity. It continues to appear regardless of how many times it is trodden on. Months passed while I saved. Like a housewife from the 1950s, she packed leftovers from work, skipped coffee, and tucked money in a tin can as a means of escape. I did something foolish because I couldn't afford iPhones or glittery jewelry sets like Ella's annual presents. Or, depending on your point of view, Brilliant. I purchased lottery tickets. Not the low-cost knockoffs either, the larger ones. The kind where the jackpots make you feel lightheaded and the odds are absurd. I laid the envelopes on the table on Christmas morning, one for each of them. Quiet hope, no major reveal. I waited till they opened them. Dad scowled. Tickets to the lottery? Really? As if I had handed them spoiled milk, Mom shook her head. What an unnecessary expense. Ella? Ella chuckled. You couldn't even afford genuine gifts because you're so broke. I couldn't get that laugh out of my head for hours. To top it all off, my mother looks at me and says, I suppose she shouldn't expect any gifts either, since Zoe didn't give anything significant. Isn't that fair? Each of them gave a nod, as if they had come to a rational, democratic decision during a business meeting. Something broke. Silently. I didn't shout. Nothing was thrown. I simply got up, circled the table, and took the tickets out of their grasp. You know what? With a trembling voice, I spoke. I'll hold on to them. Happy Christmas. After that, I departed. My coat hasn't been zipped yet. I walked till my cheeks grew numb and my ears froze. However, I persisted because it was oppressive to sit at that table for one more second. I forgot about the tickets after shoving them inside my coat pocket. To be honest, I thought they were useless. Just another depressing effort to feel important. My phone buzzed a few days later as I was taking a brief break at the restaurant. Unknown figure. I nearly didn't respond. However, I felt compelled to pick it up. Hello, is Zoe Parker here? From the State Lottery Commission. This is Linda. I chuckled. Aloud. I assumed it was a joke. This is a call to let you know that you have a winning ticket from the Christmas draw. My heart stopped beating. The 6 digits all lined up. You will receive $1,750,000 after taxes. I let the phone drop. Not in a symbolic sense. I actually dropped it on the floor of the kitchen. With shaking hands, I took it up and tried to speak while Linda described the payout procedure. I had ringing in my ears. I was having trouble breathing. I couldn't tell if I was dying or dreaming. $1. 75 million. That was an unimaginable number. It's not in my bank account. In my life, no. I went home and told them, which was the single most foolish thing I have ever done. With the bread piece birthday cake in hand, I stated it as if I were still that optimistic child as I entered the kitchen. The lottery was won by me. Quiet. My father blinked. In midair, my mother's fork froze. As if she had seen God, Ella's eyes widened. Then she said it. Hold on, you gave us one of those tickets. This indicates that the family owns the money. The room's air became poisonous. Slowly, I shook my head. No, none of you wanted them. Do you recall? You chuckled. I reclaimed them. Dad crossed his arms and leaned back. You live under this roof, Zoe. You ought to pitch in. Sugar oozed from Mom's voice. Do you even know how to manage that type of money, sweetie? I could handle it for you with the help of your father. I chuckled. When someone advises that you punch oneself in the face for fun, you chuckle like that. All right. The money is given to you, and I never see it again? Red in the face, Ella got to her feet. You're being self-centered, following everything we've done for you, I interrupted her. Finished for me? Your rooms were cleaned by me. Every meal was prepared by me. I split my paycheck with Mom. And you believe you deserve it now that I have something that is mine? My dad got up. You don't have to stay here if you refuse to share. I blinked. My mom folded her arms and joined in. You now have money. Look after yourself. We've given you ample time to remain here. Permit me. Permit me. I truly did look at all of them, and I came to the realization that something that ought to have hurt no longer did. I had never been loved by them. They had put up with me, took advantage of me. But did you adore me? No. Thus, I said the one thing I never thought I'd be able to say. All right, I'm going to go. And nobody stopped me. I packed quietly, took the lottery ticket, the same one they made fun of, my clothes, and my diploma. I stopped as I stood with my bag at the door. One final glance back. Thanks, I replied. They looked at me as if I were insane. Thanks to you, I now comprehend. I have no place here. After that, I departed. And I promised that I had a sensation I had never experienced before, as soon as that door closed behind me. Liberty. I didn't go back for a coat, even though the cold hit me like a wall as I went outdoors. I returned without getting anything. The only things I had were a duffel bag, a folded piece of paper, and more power than anyone in the home had ever given me. That evening, I got into a budget hotel, the sort with stiff pillows and flickering hallway lights. Hours passed while I stared at the ceiling, trying to tell myself it wasn't a dream. To make sure it was genuine, I continued taking the ticket out of my bag. Yes, it was. It was, again and again. I wore my oldest sneakers and a hoodie that still had a slight restaurant grease odor when I first arrived at the lottery office the following morning. I felt as though someone had given me a second chance at life as I gazed down at the $750,000 check after signing the paperwork with trembling hands. No second opportunity. An additional life. I refrained from wasting the money. I didn't get revenge tattoos on my chest, purchase a car, or plan a vacation. I had no desire to prove anything. I wanted to get away permanently. On the outskirts of the city, I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Not very fancy. No floor-to-ceiling windows or stainless steel. Simply be silent, secure. Mine. For the first time in years, I slept like a baby after locking the door. After that, I started working. I had to study everything if I wanted to start a restaurant. My own restaurant. Not only food. Enterprise. Licenses. Examinations. Payroll. Promotion. Every night, I read articles, watched videos, and made contact with strangers who had previously done the same. With business books stacked in the sink, floor plan designs on my fridge, and sticky notes all over the walls, I transformed my apartment into a war room. Then I discovered it. A dilapidated, deserted small spot in the heart of town. Back when it was a sandwich business, it was now just a building with dusty windows and a rusting sign that still said open in fading red letters. The majority of people would have passed it. However, I recognized it for what it may be when I stood on that cracked sidewalk. A start. When I mentioned that I planned to operate a restaurant there, the landlord chuckled. "Are you certain, child? 6 years have passed since that location was abandoned. It will devour your savings." It didn't matter, though. I had no intention of gambling. I was taking something back. I made a crew hire. I expressed my desires to them. Choose a tile. Purchased appliances. I went through the entire building. What I wanted was for it to feel like myself, not like money. Warm. Sincere. No nonsense. The sign was erected 3 months later. The Table of Zoe. That name. It was not limited to the front window. I was stitched into it. After being unseen my entire life, my name was now displayed in bold, gold letters. I slept hardly at all on the first day. I closed my eyes and sat in the kitchen, simply inhaling the scent of new bread, lemon zest, and garlic. A bell sounded. The front door opened, and I almost dropped my knife. The first client was a young lady and her child. By the window, she sat. I placed the roast chicken order. She also grinned as she took her first taste. A genuine grin, as if it had reached her bones. I realized then, I was someone. Word got out. Slowly at first, then more quickly. People uploaded pictures, composed reviews. They discussed how the staff remembered their names, the flavors, and the plating. However, remarks like, "This place just feels like love," really got to me. I opened a second store within a year. Then a third. I also hired people that reminded me of myself at each new job. Diligent workers who were fed up with being invisible. I didn't require a viral TikTok or a billboard. Consistency was something I had better. I arrived. Each and every day. I'm holding a knife. All set to cook. All set to take the lead. I was prepared to show myself that I was the engine, and never just the quiet lady in the backdrop. And that was sufficient for a time. Then, 3 years after I left that house, my phone rang one day. Unknown figure. I nearly didn't answer. I was buried in invoices from vendors. But I had to respond for some reason. The voice called out, "Zoe," and I stopped breathing. My mom was the one. Since the night I was expelled, I hadn't heard her voice. She cleared her throat as if she were swallowing a burden too heavy. "It's Ella," she admitted. "She's having problems." She was, of course. Ella was caught stealing from her office, it turned out. Fired immediately. News quickly spread that she had been placed on a blacklist. She would not be hired. She was relying on our parents, who were also beginning to falter, while bouncing from job to job and drowning in debt. There is nowhere else to go, except from me. My mother murmured softly, as if she still believed she could manipulate me. We need your help. I allowed the silence to get uncomfortable for her while I gazed at the floor. Did you consider me? At last, I said. After you ejected me like garbage? She muttered. She's still your sister, as if it meant something. Perhaps it ought to have. However, it didn't. Nevertheless, I was foolish. Or simply human. I offered her a job at one of my eateries. No preferential treatment. No shortcuts. She would begin in human resources. She would be rewarded. My mother let out a sigh of relief. I was aware of your goodness. Without answering, I hung up. Ella entered my second place a week later as if nothing had happened. Brand new blazer. Flawless hair. She had been honing her fake-ass smile since she was 6 years old. Initially, she was excellent. Arrived early. Assisted the employees. Stayed up late. I believed that she might have changed. Then the murmurs began. Hey Zoe, there are some strange things being said by the staff. I was underpaying individuals, according to Ella. That I was keeping money for myself. That I stole the restaurant concept from the family, and that she ought to be in charge. I was advised to become a secretary by the same family. I was made fun of by the same family for scratch-off tickets. I was unwilling to accept it. Don't go back there, I repeatedly told myself. Don't be too optimistic. My chief chef, Marco, who was also my closest relative to a brother, suddenly drew me away. He remarked, She's planning something. She is attempting to persuade folks to leave. A blow. She adds that if you don't give in, you'll have to fold. I took a while to respond. I gave her a chance, I thought as I gazed at the fire beneath the stove. I opened the door for her. Once more. She's also burning my house down. Once more. I nodded, clenching my jaw. Thank you, Marco. I am aware of what to do. However, I wasn't prepared for what followed, because that wasn't merely hearsay. My financial manager, Jenna, once entered my office one evening with a ghostly appearance. She declared, We're missing $7,500. Gone. No record of withdrawal. It's simply absent. The safe was only accessible by 3 individuals. Me, Jen, Ella too. I said nothing at all. Simply reclined in my chair and gazed up at the ceiling. I knew what I needed to do already. She wasn't accused by me. Not aloud, not quite yet. When Ella entered the office the following morning, still acting like the golden employee, I couldn't help but smile. She said good morning and dropped off reports as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't been stealthily encroaching on the place I had constructed from the ground up. But I knew now. When she stayed late, I knew exactly what she was doing, what made her seek access to financial assistance. I simply lacked proof. Additionally, I construct cases rather than level charges. So I took the necessary action. I put in covert cameras. Above the safe, one. The accounting office has one. Keep quiet. Be discreet. I kept Marco and Jenna in the dark. I didn't need rumors. I needed eyes. Because Ella wouldn't be able to help herself if she was still who I feared she was. My phone buzzed with the notification. Motion detected. Accounting office. 4 days later at 11:47 p.m. I launched the application. With my heart thumping as if it were trying to claw its way out of my chest, my thumb hovered over the screen. There she was, Ella. As if she owned the darkness, she crept in. Peering over her shoulder, she opened the safe and removed bundles of money as if they were nothing. With the same grin she used to have when she stole my things as a child and denied it, she stuffed them into her purse. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. I merely observed. I put my phone down, closed the app, and took a deep breath when she stepped out of picture. Not out of rage. With clarity. Money was no longer the only factor in this. It had never been. It was about being noticed. They treated me like furniture and strolled by me for years. Regarding the female, they handed my plate to and instructed her to clean up after the princess. Ella remained the same. She did nothing except wait. I therefore phoned the police the following morning. They didn't intend to arrive during the lunch rush, but it just so happened. It was crowded. My employees were operating like a machine. They entered the kitchen as I was plating an order. Parker? Zoe? I gave a nod. Our purpose is to talk to Ella Parker. We have cause to think, Ella interrupted before they could finish, wide-eyed, defensive already. What? What's happening? I took no action. I folded my arms. I have footage from the secure location from 2 evenings prior. Her face fell apart. She attempted to be perplexed and laugh it off. That is absurd. You must have misinterpreted. I didn't get it wrong. I saw you steal. The room fell silent. A spoon was dropped by one of my servers. Consumers were craned in the direction of the kitchen. Ella took a step back, her voice spilling with panic. You wouldn't harm me in this way. I gave her a direct look. I am subjecting you to this. And they cuffed her without warning, like a queen without her crown. He led her through the dining room. The hurricane hit less than an hour later. With anger radiating from them like heat from concrete, my parents barged in. My dad's face was red, the same color it was when he raged about taxes after drinking too much over Christmas. What on earth is the matter with you? He let forth a shout. You reported your own sister to the police? My mom's mascara was streaking like a poorly done watercolor painting as she sobbed. She simply made an error. You are descended from her. How could you have such a cold heart? I didn't wince. A mistake? I chuckled. She took something from me. From the company that I established, while you all snickered behind my back. And you'd like to discuss blood? Blood never done anything for me, but turned me into a servant. You'll be sorry, my father spit out. You are no longer our daughter if you follow through on this. The problem is this. I should have been broken by that. Instead, I experienced an internal crack, something I was carrying that I was unaware of. Well, I replied, then act as though I didn't exist. Similar to how you spent the first 25 years. They continued to yell. My mother attempted to get through it by crying. My father said he would sue me. Ella called me a monster in a text message from prison. I didn't respond. None of them. I locked the restaurant myself that evening, explored every nook and cranny, touched each table. I simply listened to the silence, the tranquility, and the space I created while standing in the kitchen beneath the soft pendant light. They would never again take that place away from me. This time, I meant it when I said that they were finished. The door closed, not a single crack. However, karma, or the cosmos, wasn't fully complete. I received a call from the DA's office a few weeks later. Those charges were coming forth. Ella's previous employer had accused her of embezzlement and theft. What's the kicker? She had falsely accused her supervisor of sexual harassment in order to get out of it. He brought witnesses, documents, and recordings before the courtroom. Ella broke down instantly. It was like seeing a trained actress forget her lines in front of a live audience as she sat on the witness stand, her hair flawless, her voice shaking, her hands wringing as if she were the victim. I never meant to steal, she said. I was just borrowing, she said. I'm trying to help the family survive, she stated. But she was never able to override the evidence. CCTV footage, bank records, statements. Then came the bomb, a complete audio recording from her previous employer, in which staff acknowledged Ella had fabricated the whole harassment incident in order to avoid going to jail the first time. There was a startled quiet in the courtroom. Ella's disguise broke, and she sobbed as if the world had forsaken her when the decision was delivered, guilty on all counts. She turned to face me, her face contorted with hatred, as they got up to cuff her once more. Zoe, you'll regret this, she growled. My life was stolen by you. I was not blinking. No, I replied. You ruined yours. I didn't see her again after that. I anticipated feeling victorious after the trial. However, I didn't. No fireworks. No soundtrack of closure is playing in my mind. Just silence. A stifling, strange silence. I didn't celebrate by going out. I kept the workers in the dark. I didn't even check the local paper to see if Ella's sentencing was reported. I simply returned home, stood in my apartment's doorway, and allowed the quiet to envelop me. I poured a glass of wine that evening, knees pulled up to my chest, just like when I was a youngster hiding in the laundry room. I sat on the floor with my back against the refrigerator. But I wasn't hiding now. I was at last by myself, and in a pleasant way, and I realized I had lost my anger. Not in front of them, not even at her. I was finished. I finally realized after years of vying for their acceptance and attempting to gain a place at a table where I was never invited. I was not the intended user of that table. It had never been. I was attempting to fit in with a household that had never considered me a human being. Just a body that took up room, flooring that have been cleaned, obeyed commands. However, this life I created, I owned this. No chairs were borrowed, no plates that were passed down. The first thing in my life that didn't have someone else's name stitched into the lining was Zoe's Table, which is both my restaurant and my name. It was 3 years later. 5 sites were opened throughout the state. My name was now well known. They enjoyed my cuisine, not because I won the jackpot or because it was connected to some controversy. Because when they entered the doors, they sensed something. Because they were not treated like dollar signs, but rather like actual persons by the staff. Marco joined me as a business associate. I trusted Jenna with everything, and she continued to handle the books. We hired people who, like me, understood what it was like to be invisible, such as single mothers without family support, people with criminal histories, and former foster children. We didn't create a network of eateries. We established a tribe. I would bleed for them, those who supported me, actual family. Not the sort you're born into, but the kind you find. My parents made several attempts to call. Various figures, various tricks. It was to beg sometimes. It was to yell at times. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Nothing else could be said. That was the end of that tale. I had stopped writing chapters for them. I once put Ella's name on a court document pertaining to restitution payments. I didn't finish reading it. I didn't give a damn. I had no right to collect any amount she owed. I relocated to a modest home in the hills. Nothing ostentatious. A large kitchen, a rear patio overlooking the sunset, and 1 story. In the backyard, I planted herbs, mint, basil, and rosemary. After every service, I would return home, take off my shoes, and inhale the aroma of fire, dirt, and silence. Peace does not appear suddenly. Like sunlight, it creeps in beneath a door. You don't cringe at your reflection for the first time this morning. When you laugh for the first time without looking to see who is watching. The realization that you've already forgiven yourself for needing an apology. Thus, you no longer yearn for one from others. In newspaper articles, podcasts, and interviews, people occasionally inquire about my past. The juicy drama is what they seek. The tale of how I rose from the ashes. I don't give them everything, though. Only fragments. Not out of embarrassment. However, the entire tale is not part of the world. It belongs to the girl who thought she could make a difference, while standing in the kitchen with burnt toast and damaged hands, to the girl who, while knowing no one was listening, continued to murmur her fantasies into a pillow, to the woman who never turned around after leaving her childhood home with nothing except a folded slip of paper and $1.7 million. Now, if I could just say one thing to her, it would be, you succeeded. Not because you become wealthy, not after you disproved them, but because you stopped pleading with them to understand your value and instead realized it yourself. The narrative of Zoe ends there. If you've ever had to start from over in order to establish your value, if you've ever fled from people who were meant to love you but never did, or if you've ever felt alienated in your own home, remember that you are not broken. You're evolving. Furthermore, you owe no one your silence. No more.